Hi, I'm Kevin Jeter, along with Afshin Bernard, Vincent Charles, and Chris Jerry, and we welcome you to this week's edition of the nation's capital sports show, where it is most definitely on. Well, it's on Golden Pond, as the NHL schedules are out for all of the NHL teams, I should say, and the Washington Capitals will be rocking that red. 48 games in 99 days. The first game, of course, is going to be at Tampa. What do you got to say about that, Mr. Jerry? And by the way, I like your haircut, looking very dapper.
Oh, thank you. I've got enough comments about it, but let's go Caps. That's what I say. I'm ready for the hockey season to start.
Well, Afshin, as you know, due to the short season, there's no room for error. You can't go 7 games on a losing streak, that's for sure.
You can't do that. They're only going to play conference games out of these 48. And actually, the first 2 games, I think, are against Southeast Division foes, but then they won't play Southeast Division foes for another 3 or 4 weeks. So every game really does mean something now this year.
And head coach Adam Oates, this is his first foray into the NHL big leagues, I should say. Vincent, how about that?
I'm waiting to see how the players respond to Oates, and I can't believe the fans packed the first practice. I'm ready. Washington's ready.
That's right. I think it's long overdue that the fans get their just dessert, because the Washington Capitals are on, just like the nation's capital sports show. All right, let's move on to the Washington Wizards. More good news, and the good news continues. John Wall is back in his first game, of course, against the Atlanta Hawks. He played 16 minutes, came off the bench. 16 minutes, 16 points, 4 assists, and 2 turnovers. You got to like what you see so far, Afshin.
A lot of hustle on the court, but I don't see much changing in the near future. I do see John Wall probably getting the team to play a little bit better, and he'll run a little bit more offensively, but the worst record in the league, and it's probably going to end up that way.
But where's your encouragement at, man? You're supposed to be a fan and a professional, but I get what you're saying. Chris, let's talk about John Wall a little bit. It remains to be seen after several games as to whether or not that knee's going to hold up.
Well, we'll see. He didn't have a training camp, obviously, so we'll see how he goes with the his season. But personally, I would rather have the #1 draft pick. So I hope he plays well, but I hope the Wizards don't do as well, because I'd like to get a good pick.
Oh, boy.
I think you'll find that to be the case, Chris. Don't worry.
And how about this, Vincent? You talk in terms about John Wall returning, but the whole team, for once, is assembled on the court. And we've seen in that first game, and in terms of the Atlanta Hawks and what the Washington Wizards can do when they have their full force on the floor, when they run everything through John Wall. You got to like it.
Yes, they definitely responded. Bradley Beal had a good game. The whole team responded well to John Wall. Avsheen, it's called enthusiasm. The Wizards are on a 2-game winning streak.
Well, you got to like what you see. Actually, John Wall didn't play in the game versus Oklahoma, but they did win, and now they're going for a 3-game winning streak against Orlando tonight.
They play Orlando. Kevin, you make a good point. This is actually the first time all year that everybody will be in uniform now. So, maybe things are looking up for the Washington Wizards, and that's as enthusiastic as I'll be.
And now, of course, now the Wizards can pack, the arena with a bunch of fans, and you no longer have to buy dirt cheap seats. That may be actually the end of that.
Yeah.
Go on StubHub and find yourself those nice seats for a quarter of the fraction of the price. Now that John Wall and company is back, we wish them the best of luck. Well, we're going to talk about Major League Baseball. What better way to talk about Major League Baseball in the dead heat of winter? Let's start out talking about the Baseball Writers Association of America. No one made it into the Baseball Hall of Fame. As a matter of fact, we're going to spend some time talking about the 3 notable players in Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Sammy Sosa, all each probably getting like 36% of that vote. And of course, Craig Biggio ended up getting a little bit better than them, 68% of the vote, although I expect Biggio perhaps to be in sooner than the other 3. Afshin.
Yeah, Biggio is on the 3,000 hit list. I think he's 5th in doubles all time. So I think eventually he will get in. He had about 68 or 69% of the vote this year. And also, who else I might put on that list is Mike Piazza, because he's the all-time home run hitting catcher in Major League Baseball. So I think I'd probably put him on that list too, and he's not going to make it.
Chris, did you expect this to happen sooner than later, in terms of no one got into the inductee Baseball Hall of Fame this year?
No, I didn't expect anybody to make it, no. Just because of the steroid issues. Didn't expect it.
And Vincent, and when we talk in terms of the steroid issues, let's talk about Sammy Sosa in particular. The cork bat that he had, do you think that this perhaps made the writers feel a little bit more leery or weary in terms of not selecting him? Because if we look at his terms of his career, he really hasn't had that much of a stellar career.
Yeah, he had a couple of good years there. It's probably going to affect him somewhat, the cork bat issue. But any of these guys with connections or alleged steroid use, it's going to hurt him. I expected Biggio to get in, and he probably will before these guys. But Piazza, yes, I've also heard that name come out.
All right, question for you guys. In terms of Barry Bonds, I should say, in terms of Roger Clemens and Sammy Sosa, who do you expect to make it to the Baseball Hall of Fame first?
I think if they're going to actually get voted in, it will be Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. Both of them, I think, maybe down the road will be. And let's not forget, this has been going on for years. Long before the steroid era, way back in the 1940s and 50s, people have been using testosterone in some form or another. But to answer your question, Bonds and Clemens would be the ones among this group that should make it, at least in my opinion.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's going to take a while. And I'll tell you, if I was a voter, one person who would make is Sammy Sosa, because steroids are not, I just think looking over his whole career, what he was before the steroid era, what he was after they said no steroids, his numbers weren't there. So he wouldn't make it, but I do think Bonds, and I do think that, Clemens will make it.
Vincent?
Good point there, Chris. I would say Bonds with the home run record first, then probably Clemens.
All right, we'll see how that goes come down the line, and hopefully Biggio, who's well deserving of it, will make it next year. In addition to, I do agree, Barry Bonds, based off of his body of work, and even Roger Clemens as well. Let's talk about Major League Baseball. The talk continues. The Players Association and Major League Baseball have decided that they're going to randomly test for HGH, and that is human growth hormones, as well as elevated levels of testosterone. And good deal, Afshin?
Yeah, I think it's, better late than never, I guess. It could have happened at least a few years ago, but it's a good deal. And testosterone, this is such a big deal in Major League Baseball and all the sports, really. I don't see a problem with it. And it's nice to see that the Baseball Major League Players Association and the owners have come together on this one, finally.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that the timing of this announcement was after the Hall of Fame vote. So baseball is going to make that move, and I think they need to, because what baseball doesn't need is for Congress to be sticking their nose in. So I think it's a good move with baseball and the union to finally have an agreement there.
And we all know what happens when Congress sticks their nose and stuff, a la the Roger Clemens thing where he misremembered a lot of stuff.
He misremembered.
It's good that now they have something concrete to go by, because in the past, the policy wasn't as clear for some of these guys. But now the policy will be much more clear, the testing, the consequences. So I think it's good all around.
All right. If you want to get in on the action, you can hit us up on our email address at tncsportshow@gmail.com. So the conversation continues in regards to baseball. Let's bring it down locally. First baseman Alan LaRouche for the Washington Nationals, hero savant, signed to a 2-year, $25 million deal. Is it a good thing, Vincent?
I think it is, especially for his defense. Now, he may not hit 33 home runs, but I think he's good for at least 25. But his defense this past year really made a difference. He made those other guys in the infield look a lot better.
And Vincent brought up a actually important point, Afshin, because he may not hit 25, or he may hit 25, not 33 like he had in the past. That could possibly be to the fact that guys will pitch him differently.
Yeah, in the NL East, you might see a lot of guys pitching him a little bit differently, but Vincent's right. His defense is really what brought him back to this team. And also, when he did test the free agent market, not too many other teams wanted to give him a 3-year deal, which is what he was looking for. But he was a Silver Slugger and he was a Gold Glove, and it's deserving that he does come back, and they need a tough first baseman on the defensive end.
Chris?
Well, Vincent stole my thunder, too, because I absolutely, that's where I was going to go. I like LaRoche's signing very much more for defense than on offense. I think offensively the team will be okay next year, but, you just can't discount the defense. One of the things I did have a worry, had they let him go and had they moved Michael Morse to first, is just the fact that how many runs would the team give up, because you're talking about a guy that can scoop out of the ground, a guy that can stretch and get it. That defense often gets underplayed in baseball, and LaRoche for the next 2 years, if he holds down first base, Nationals should be pretty solid there.
I like that. We're going to let you end it on that note, Mr. Jerry. This is the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's most definitely on. Chris Jerry, Afshin Banab, and of course, Vincent Charles. And also, you can catch us on our Facebook page at the Nation's Capital Sports Show at facebook.com. Coming up, we're going to talk about NFL, the playoffs. The playoffs. Sorry, the Redskins didn't make it, but we're still going to talk about the NFL. And we're going to talk about former Redskins great Joe Jacoby, how he was snuffed, actually not snuffed, but snubbed into getting into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We'll get you guys' opinion on that. This and much, much more on this week's edition of the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's most definitely on. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Kevin Jeter, along with Afshin Banab, Vincent Charles, and Chris Jerry. Welcome back to the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's most definitely on. Let's talk about what we enjoy talking about the best and the most, and that is sports. I got one word to say, gentlemen. We're going to start off this segment talking about Lance Armstrong. Chris.
Well, I'm surprised. I heard today that Lance Armstrong went on Oprah's show, and do you know he confessed to using performance-enhancing drugs?
Oh, stop the presses.
Man, I am shocked. Aren't you, Vincent?
Surprise, surprise. I don't know if it's going to change anybody else's opinion about him. He's trying to go out there and look good. It's not going to change my opinion, and I don't know. He had his minutes of fame, and maybe he doesn't want to leave the spotlight.
Afshin, has the damage been done?
Well, yeah, they took away 7 titles. He had to also apologize to all the people in Livestrong and all the, the damage was done there too, especially because there were so many people that looked up to him because of cancer research and working on that. And there are a lot of people that were hurt just on that, but his whole professional career is kaput.
That's right. All the records have been diminished from the books. And interesting that we were talking earlier in our pre-production meeting in terms of when his records titles were taken away, typically it goes to the next people that would take charge of that title, but there was no one on that list that got it, and for obvious reasons, right?
That's right. The Tour de France committee, just like a Miss America pageant, just like in the Olympics, if somebody was deemed using drugs, let's say in the Olympics, and they got a gold medal, Ben Johnson, for instance, went to Carl Lewis. The same thing in the Tour de France, 7 times, 7 second-place finishers. They didn't give it to any of them.
Well, see, the thing is, first of all, I want to acknowledge the good that he did do with the Livestrong Foundation and giving hope to a lot of people who had cancer and what have you. But the issue that I have with him specifically is not just that he did it, but he really went to the extreme and throwing his teammates and other people under the bus, which caused those people, Floyd Landis for one example, where people still have not forgiven Floyd because he's a liar and he's jealous of Lance and all this stuff. Well, we know now that Floyd was telling the truth about Lance Armstrong, and so I really want to know what Lance is doing to apologize to all these people that he threw under the bus and made their lives hell.
And Floyd Landis, yeah, he wasn't the only one. There were a lot of people he did that to. Not just Landis, not just people in Livestrong, but other bikers as well.
Vincent.
It'll be interesting to see how much and to who he apologizes to on the Oprah show.
And obviously his decision to apologize, and in terms of the sport of cycling, it's made a lot of changes sweeping across the board, Afshin, and we're seeing those changes already.
Yeah, we definitely have, and it seems like every sport is affected by this. It doesn't matter what it is, but eventually it catches up with you, and you have to make those sweeping changes finally.
But Kevin, I have this question for you. Since Lance Armstrong won a lawsuit for libel against a company, who do they go to get this money back? Get the money back they had to pay out to him?
I don't know.
Why not?
Good question.
Good question. No, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
Black mark on Lance Armstrong forever, and obviously on the sport. Yes, no.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Can you really get any more black mark against cycling? I mean, I don't know what you can do, but it is a black mark on the sport. But you know, he's got what, 25, 30 million in the bank.
Yeah.
He might be able to turn it around down the road. You know, he might be able to change his reputation a little bit. He might. We'll see.
Now, some will ask, why now? Why come out now and say, hey, you know, I did this? Why not earlier on?
Well, I think once USADA came and basically, you know, outed him, and then he didn't fight it. And let's not be surprised if there's another book coming out down the road to make more money. More money, more money, more money.
That's right. A la Pete Rose. USADA, the United States Anti-Doping Agency that Chris was referring to, they really put the pressure on in the last month or so on Lance Armstrong.
Yeah, pretty interesting to see how this is going to turn out and what's going to be the, obviously, outcome months down the road. Let's talk about NFL. The NFL playoffs. Man, you talk about some doozies of a game. The game, Ravens with
what a game.
Denver.
What a game.
Flacco just heaved that 70-yard pass. And then, wow, that was amazing.
Torrey Smith looked like a Hall of Famer in that game, didn't he, guys? He could have caught 2 more touchdowns if Flacco had found him earlier in the game. But he caught 2 remarkable touchdowns. And Baltimore, they got by Denver in the Mile High City.
That's right.
Well, you know, as they say in Baltimore, Joe Flacco, hun, you know. But, yeah, you got to give credit. Flacco was a heck of a pass. It was poorly defended, but it was a heck of a pass for him to get there. And maybe Flacco got himself a 15-year or $15 million deal as a quarterback the next several years. Good win for the Ravens up there in the playoffs.
All right, any particular games from this weekend that actually stood out? And actually, we're going to let Vincent talk about the Ravens game. My apologies there, sir.
Flacco, once again, proving he has arrived. That was a great play. Baltimore defense hung tough in that game. But I'll tell you, I don't know what happened to that secondary.
Well, some will say Flacco has already arrived. He has won Super Bowl, correct?
No,
not one Super Bowl.
Flacco.
No, but he could.
5
championships. There you go.
Right.
You
So
know?
Flacco's done well this year. He really has. And you got to credit Baltimore's defense, too, especially with Ray Lewis retiring whenever his last game might be.
Yeah, I know. Well, it could be relatively soon. You never know. You know, it could be sooner than later when they play the Patriots.
That's right. They'll play the Patriots in the AFC Championship game for the 2nd consecutive year.
Well, you know, the one thing about that, you mentioned Ray Lewis, and he's coming to the end of his career. But he could have done without the biblical verses at the end of the game.
Well,
man. I was like, gee, Ray, that's a little bit much. But I'm glad for the Ravens and glad for Flacco, and I'm glad for our neighbors to the north, Baltimore. You know, not a whole lot going on in that city, so the Ravens really have them rallying, much like the Redskins had D.C. rallying.
Yeah, that's nice. You know, any other games that you guys watched that were memorable to you?
Well, you know, I know what Chris. I mean, both NFC games were, but let's start off with your boys, the Niners. San Francisco and Green Bay. How about that?
Good game.
Well, I thought the 49ers would win. I didn't know that they would win. No, I didn't. I didn't think they would win that big. But I think the person who really gets vindicated is Jim Harbaugh. I mean, the decision to go with Colin Kaepernick in the middle of the season. A lot of people question it, but Jim knew what he had there, and I think at the end of the day, he's the best quarterback for that team. And you know, I expect them to probably beat Atlanta, even though the game's at Atlanta.
I do. I think that they can beat Atlanta. I'd love to see the Michigan coaches meet up in the Super Bowl. But that Atlanta-Seattle game was amazing, Vincent. The Atlanta-Seattle game, it left me my mouth
to see Atlanta blow that lead was one thing, but you know, Seattle showed they're a good team, and you know, they certainly are deserving of praise that, you know, in the playoffs.
Well, they're a good team, and I think what we also see is Russell Wilson going into the future. You see, this guy is going to be, if he stays healthy, and no reason to think he wouldn't, he's going to be a really solid player. But, boy, can you imagine, Kevin, if Atlanta had lost that game? I mean, the Georgia Dome was rocking, and then all of a sudden Seattle scored late, and I know they thought, like, man, here we go again.
And it seemed like Atlanta was trying to lose that game at the end. I don't know what they were doing, but the way Atlanta was up 20-0, and then Seattle comes storming back, and Atlanta got this one last shot at that Matt Bryant field goal, and then they tried to onside kick it or whatever you want to say they were doing.
Yeah.
And Seattle actually had the opportunity to win the game.
That's right. Pretty amazing when you look in terms of the whole NFL playoffs. I mean, that's what it's about, excitement at its best. So let's size up the games. Patriots at the Patriots, of course, versus the Ravens. Who do you have for that game in the AFC?
It's tough. This is a rematch of last year's game. Ordinarily, I would go with the Patriots, but something tells me the Ravens are on a bit of a run. I think they have a lot of confidence coming out of this Denver game. They went to New England last year and they lost when they missed a field goal at the end that could have sent it to overtime. I think the Ravens are going to win this game.
All right, Chris Vincent.
Well, it's a tough one to call. You know, naturally, like Chris, I would go with Brady. But with Gronkowski being out,
yes,
that is a key factor. Baltimore, they could be a team of destiny. And Torrey Smith this year has made a difference. He's really improved over his rookie year. So I'm going to go with Chris. I'm going to take Baltimore. A close game, but Baltimore and that defense.
Ashley.
Yeah, Baltimore's defense, I think, is superb right now. They're coming off a great win against Denver, and they've had a little streak of their own. I think Ray Rice is more important than people give him credit for being, and I do pick Baltimore over the Patriots, and the Patriots, to me, didn't look all that great against the Houston Texans, so Baltimore over New England in the AFC to represent them in the Super Bowl.
And I agree with you, sir. NFC, Falcons versus the 49ers. Chris,
well, first of all, Kevin, I guess you gave us a royal flush. All of us agreed. We all got Baltimore. All right, hon.
How about that?
But the 49ers, I really expect them to go into Atlanta and win, which makes me really nervous because as good as the 49ers looked, you never know. They could have a stinker of a game, and now that Atlanta's gotten over the hump with this win against Seattle, who knows? You know, they could have a lot of confidence. But I really like the 49ers because I think Colin Kaepernick and I think the running game of San Francisco, and I think San Francisco's defense will neutralize some of the things Atlanta does. So I like the 49ers. Not because that's my team, but that's who I think.
But they are your team.
Yeah, they're your team. You know, that's okay if you're a little biased, but at least you're being honest. You know, that's okay. Abshin.
Yeah, San Francisco. The only thing I'm afraid of in this game is that it could be a dull game in this sense, that one team just may end up blowing out another team. That could happen. I don't know why I have a feeling that'll happen. I don't know who might blow out whom, but San Francisco's defense, to me, carries them, and Jim Harbaugh, I think, is one of the most underrated coaches in the NFL in his second year at that level, and I think he's done a great job. The Niners should beat the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta.
Vincent.
I can't see Atlanta beating San Francisco by a lot of points. So that's out, actually.
Is that out? Okay.
It could be the other way, but San Francisco has got a great defense, like we've been talking about here. And this guy Kaepernick has really made a difference. I remember following him when he was at Nevada in college, and I was saying to myself, he's going to be a good pro. And the passing, the running, the spark he has provided for the team. Plus, as Chris mentioned, you got the running game with Gore. San Francisco.
All right, I like that.
And you?
San Francisco.
So what
right.
we've now all
flush.
said that a double flush that we think in New Orleans we're going to have the Harbaugh Bowl.
That's
because
right.
the two brothers
That's
we
right.
expect to meet
the
in
Michigan
Super Bowl.
Bowl,
That's
the
right.
Harbaugh Bowl.
All right, let's move on. Talking about those Washington Redskins, former Washington Redskin offensive great Joe Jacoby not being chosen as the finalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but maybe next year, Afshin, yes, no?
I think so, if not next year, somewhere down the road. I think he has actually till 2018 before he gets on that seniors list. So I think eventually he will be. He was a great offensive tackle. Came in as an undrafted free agent out of Louisville, and Joe Gibbs wanted to make him a defensive lineman. Joe Bugel protested that, made him an offensive left tackle, which was unusual because he actually was down. He was down with his right hand. He used his right hand when he was in his set formation. 12 years. 8 Pro Bowls, 4 Super Bowls, 3 Super Bowl victories.
All right, Vincent, part of this could be in terms of the late entry or Jacoby not being inducted into chosen to be inducted to the Football Hall of Fame could perhaps deal with offense. Usually offensive players, they don't get all the glory if you're on the offensive line, if you're an offensive tackle as opposed to defense. If you're on defense, your name's going to get called. If you're on offense, you're going to get offsides.
That's right, holding.
Yeah.
That's a great point, Kevin. If he was a star, quarterback, running back, defensive star, maybe it would be easier for him. But I also think those teams were so good back then, and the Redskins have a lot of guys on those former teams already in the NFL that it may take a little time for him to make it.
Great point. Great that Vincent mentioned that, Chris, because as you know, a lot of the Redskins from the 80s, they are slowly but surely getting into the Hall of Fame, Pro Football Hall of Fame sooner, actually later rather than sooner.
Yeah, I think the point you're making about the offensive lineman is a great point because they don't necessarily get acknowledged other than if it's a false start or if it's a hold. And the other thing, too, that, John Riggins kind of overshadows those folks. Usually when you're an offensive lineman and you're going to go to the Hall of Fame, it's because you really have a lot of good running backs. And in this case, Riggins has so overshadowed the other guys on the offensive line. I think that's hurt a little bit. But much to what Afshin said, I think eventually he'll get in. It's a long process to get into the Hall of Fame, and I think eventually he'll get in.
And, Kevin, there's not too many players left from that 80s team that I think should get in, really, from the Gibbs era. I mean, Monk is in. Darryl Green is finally in.
Russ Grimm, 2010.
Russ Grimm, right. There's not many left. He probably would be the only one left that should go, or that you might find deserving. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head right now.
You don't like Gary Clark?
Well, he didn't play that long. Gary Clark had a great 5 years here in Washington, but no, not for Hall of Fame, Chris.
And we're going to let Vincent have the last word on this.
I think in time he'll eventually be in, but it'll take a little time.
All right, thank you much, gentlemen. Let's go on to big news flash. I mean, this is big business here. The Hogettes. That's right, those snort-wearing, sundress wearing men that have been at all the Washington Redskins games for the past 25 to 30 years. They are hanging up the snouts, hanging up the sundresses, hanging up the hats. What do you got to say? I mean, it had to come to the end, just like the Fat Boys.
Yeah, all good things must come to an end. The Hogettes were a very good thing for Washington Redskins tradition, I guess. So they're putting the snouts away, taking off those crazy hats, and putting away those dresses too.
That's right.
Time for them to go.
And by the way, if you don't know who the Fat Boys are, they are a rap group from the 80s. Google it, Fat Boys. All right, Vincent. I digress.
I hate to see the Hogettes go. I think they're a tradition. I think they're great for the Redskins' public relations, and I'd like to see them continue, and I'm saddened by their retirement.
But check this out. How about if the Hogettes are put into the Redskins fan Hall Book of Fame, or
Yeah, the Redskins
right.
Ring of Fame.
There you go.
Actually, it would not be a bad idea.
You make a good point, Kevin. The Hogettes, I believe, are in the Hall of Fame fan section. They are actually in Canton, Ohio's wing that belong to the fans of the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So, putting them in the Ring of Fame at FedEx Field
That's
would
right.
be a great idea.
That's right. And the good thing about this is, well, actually the sad thing about this, it seems like we have a different type of fan nowadays. We don't have that, not that you don't have that loyalty among fans, but golly, back in the 80s and the 90s and stuff, you really had those super fans that would actually be there and be in the games, and really when they participated, it was to the nth.
Yeah, you talk about the 80s and 90s. I remember the dog pound in Cleveland, the black hole in Oakland. You love watching those fans. They really get into it.
I think
they're scary sometimes, though.
A couple more years of winning will bring that about. I mean, the fans will get a bit more crazier. They've waited a long time. They've been patient.
It's going to be interesting, though, and the point I was trying to drive home, who's going to be the next wave of fans to do something crazy, and for how long? Will we have the RG3 ringettes with the dreadlocks to come to the games and that type of stuff, or has that era ended? That's the point I'm trying to make. Chris, we're going to let you have the last word on that.
I don't know if it's ended. I mean, in all seriousness about the Hogettes, the fact is they've been doing that for 25 years. And, we all know it ourselves. Times have changed. People can stay home and watch HDTV. They don't need to go to FedEx and pay $35 a park. And, the Hogettes, as great as they may have been as supporters, it can't be easy to sit behind the bench where you can't see the game.
Yeah, I know. So, and like you said, now they get to do that in the comfort of their home if they so desire. Yeah. This is the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's always on. If you get an opportunity to watch us, check us out on Arlington Independent Media or AIM, Comcast 69 and Fios 38. For Afshin Banab, Chris Jerry, and, of course, Vincent Charles. I'm Kevin Jeter, but before we get out of here, you're pointing, but obviously, I always get to this in last. Be patient, Grasshopper.
All right.
And so we're going to actually thank the guys that actually make us look good, the talent behind the camera. They might as well be in front because they do a tremendous job each and every week.
They do a wonderful job. Kevin Sampson, one of the producers, Devin Gallagher, Charles Smith, Philippe Diaz, Steve Cordell. He does the graphics, of course. Kimberly Phillip, our Lightning floor manager. Ken Briley, he makes us sound good because he ran the audio. And our camera, Craig Syfax, double nickel over there. Vincent Brown, Celine DeStasio, LJ Lacoma. Great job by the AIM crew, as always. And of course, you are the producer as well of the Nation's Capital Sports Show.
Well, we all are producers and hosts, and so no one gets that single billing. But I appreciate the compliment. But nonetheless, I wouldn't be anywhere without you three guys and basically the staff that we have here at AIM.
Very much.
So, for the Nation's Capital Sports Show, once again, I'm Kevin, Afshin, Vincent, and Chris. We hope you go out and have a great week and have a great sporting week. Go Wizards, go Capitals, and thanks for listening and watching the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's always on. Take care.